Okay, everybody, welcome back to a quick Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024 video. Today, if you can't tell, we're in New York City. We are at the helipad, and something happened yesterday that we need to go over briefly, as well as an announcement. So let's get this thing started up real quick first, and then we'll get into it. Let's get our battery and anti-collision lights on. Mute our horn. Fuel's good. Not doing any sort of system checks. We're going to press my starter button that I have here on my peripherals. Wait for our N1s to get up into the 15 range. And slowly click our throttle over there to idle. It's going to start going up. We have like 6 to 9 seconds of allowable time in the red. So that was fine. And one's going to get up into around the 50 to 60% mark, and we're going to flip our starter to generating. Going to turn our avionics and everything else on. We're going to slowly increase our rotor RPM up to operating range while keeping our torque low, which basically just means a slow twist up. So you can see I'm slowly increasing my throttle down there, and we're watching our gauge here and our gauge here. So yeah, basically we're ready to go. Today is Friday, April 11th. Yesterday was Thursday the 10th. And if you haven't seen or heard, there was a helicopter crash in New York City yesterday. And we're going to discuss that a little bit and have a little bit of an announcement as well. I just, as in a few minutes ago, got this model from Cow & Sims. Let's see how it flies. I'm assuming it's not too different than the 206B3. A little bit of left pedal, start pulling up on the cyclic. A little bit of leaning back as well. Okay, not too bad. I'm going to come over here to the pad and we'll take off from there. Let's get rid of our lollipops there. Perfect. Okay, so yesterday, April 10th, around 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, a sightseeing helicopter, the 206L3, which I think was an L4. Either way, 206L, which is what we are currently flying, took off from this heliport for a standard sightseeing tour of the Statue of Liberty and going up the, I believe, the Hudson. Don't crucify me too much, as I'm not exactly familiar with all the landmarks in New York City. Just kind of going off what I've seen so far and what my general knowledge is on stuff like this. So they went off to do a standard sightseeing flight. It was the pilot and 5 passengers. This helicopter is capable of putting all passengers in the back, so I don't know if he had anybody up front, but that's yet to be revealed, and that could change whether or what the issue with the flight would or could have been. So during their flight, they did the normal thing of taking the helicopter to go see what the Statue of Liberty was all about, and then they went up the Hudson River. What happened later on the river, they've yet to find out. Like I said, it's less than 24 hours since this has happened, so I'm not going to tell you that this was it or this wasn't it. I'm going to give you a pretty good guess of a few options of what could have happened, as well as a few slightly less likelies. And then we're going to touch on this in a few days once the NTSB has some more preliminary data out. And that's also going to be part of the announcement of how we're going to go about doing this new series that I'm going to be running. So yeah, they did their normal sightseeing, flight scene tour of the Statue of Liberty, and then they headed up the river. If those of you that aren't aware, there is a very unique thing that happens with New York City and their flights along the river. It's one of the few things that's allowed VFR, and it's very particular and specific on how you're supposed to do it. But it is something that is allowed. I do believe this pilot did have flight following, though, because he was checking in with whether it was New York Center or local towers or whatever. Either way, then they continued on for their normal tour, heading here up north. So something important to think about with this particular helicopter, it's a two-bladed helicopter, and it's an underslung system, and I'm going to put a picture on screen now for you to see. Basically, you can imagine let's imagine like a cross-section of a top hat somebody wears. That top hat sits down over the drive shaft of the mast, or the output from the transmission, however you'd like to put it, or whatever the specific wording is for this helicopter. I'm not 100% sure. But that's how it sits on and over the drive shaft itself. When the helicopter goes through a low G scenario, whether that's pushing forward for an obstacle avoidance, or some sort of a non-low G scenario of a quick maneuver, left, right, back, that's not a traditional lowering the collective to lose your altitude sort of maneuver, it can cause the edges of the top hat, where if you even look at the shape of our hangers right here, where we can imagine this is the top, a blade comes out here, and a blade comes out here. This corner here and here can impact the drive shaft when you have a significant movement of the helicopter. Under normal flying conditions, that's usually not a thing. That's not something that you need to worry about, just because of whenever the blades move, the helicopter will move with it. But under those circumstances where it is something that's fast or drastic, or in a low G scenario to where there's an unloading of the rotor system, you can cause an issue called mast bumping. And it's basically whenever those corners, basically whenever those corners here or here, the drive shaft or the mast, you get an issue of denting and damaging and cracking. And now, while the helicopter can still fly in most conditions with that, the dents on it allow the rotor system to tilt slightly further than what it did before. When the helicopter and the parts are all new and in good condition, you don't need to worry about that. But in this scenario, or in a mast bumping scenario, that extra few millimeters of play up here can account to 6 inches to a foot of movement on the back, which would mean that the main rotor itself can contact the tail boom. That's pretty much one of the only ways that you can get the tail boom to come off helicopters in normal-ish operating conditions. Of course, there is oh man, you went way too hard into a turn and you drifted it sideways, and the huge air pressure on the left or right can bend and snap it. But to get the main rotor to come off as well during that wouldn't be likely. So for the main rotor to be separated as well, that, in my opinion, points to some sort of damage to the main mast and shaft up top. So thinking of that, I would assume there's a mast bumping situation that caused the tail strike, and for once the tail strike happened, it caused such a bad vibration that it snapped the main shaft where there was already damage to it from the mast bumping. Now, what could have caused the mast bumping? There's a few different things that it could have been. The big thing, like I said, is a low G pushover sort of thing. So if you're cruising around at 100 knots here, we'll slow down a little bit, and you were to see a bird, which is common at this time, things are starting to migrate back north again, or a drone, which again is common in this area. Even though it's illegal, people will still do it just to try to get the good shots. But pushing forward and causing a low G scenario can cause your rotor system to float above the mast a little bit, making mast bumping much more likely. And I think they figured out that the actual movement of that doesn't cause it, but it's the snap recovery of it that does. That's neither here nor there. Also, I believe yesterday was a bit heavier on the weather. We're past 24 hours. Not sure if it's going to show here, but there was a bit of weather that was coming through. It did hail in New York City yesterday. I got that note from a friend who was up there. So that could be an issue as far as the weather. But my assumption, if it is weather related, would be him being at the 400 feet elevation that he was cleared for and being and entering into inadvertent IMC, or accidentally flying into a cloud or getting to a place to where you lose your spatial orientation. That, if he were to freak out, could cause him to push down, causing the deload, and the pulling back would cause a mast bump. Dodging to avoid something being the other one. Those are my 95% chance of what happened. The other 5% I kind of give to the option of maybe there's a medical emergency with him, and if he did have a passenger in the passenger seat, maybe they tried to take control, and being unfamiliar with how the systems work and how maneuvering needs to happen caused that sort of scenario. That's kind of my other 5%, as well as if one of them were up there and they had a medical emergency, or they were holding a backpack and dropped it and the backpack pushed against the cyclic. Those would be all my biggest guesses. Of course, I'm not an expert. I wasn't there, and we're not going to know anything for sure until we really start hearing from the NTSB, but we'll go over that later. So that kind of leads us into the announcement for the channel. If those of you that don't know me, I work in the film industry as a props and armorer, so I handle the firearms on movie sets and TV shows and stuff, and the show I was just on, Will Trent, Season 3, is now over. So I've got nothing but free time in my books. I don't have anything else booked at the moment, so in my spare time, in an effort to continue flying and doing all my ground school and everything, I'm going to do a flight around the world. And when I say a flight around the world, I mean mini flights. It should be around a 250 to 300 hour journey as far as airtime, depending on the different places we visit. I plan on doing some exploratory things as we go, maybe taking some longer ways around, just to see different unique places. And with that said, we do plan on coming through New York so far with my pre-flights planning. And by the time we come through there, I'll make sure that it's a known thing, that we have all the information from the NTSB to make a 99% assumption as far as what happened. If not something that's settled in stone, it depends on when we get through and when I come through this area. I've yet to decide if we're going to be going east or west going around the world. But either way, that's something that we're going to be doing. So subscribe and turn on the notifications if that's something you're interested in. I'll try to be doing it in live time around the world. So if it's 2 o'clock a.m. here and I'm flying overseas, that's going to be daytime overseas, or vice versa. I'll try to do it as realistically and as good as we possibly can. Yeah, feel free to subscribe and stick around for that. It's something that I do plan on doing here starting tomorrow. 250 hours, not a straight stream. We'll be doing it in many different sections, and I'll try to be doing 4 hours a day. So please feel free to stop by, and we'll talk about things as we go. We'll stop and look at historic crashes and things that would influence the world of aviation now. We'll be looking at landmarks, neat things, places I've been, places you want to go, places I want to go. And we're going to be checking all that out as we go. So yeah, we're going to set down here, turn the helicopter off, and call that a day. Thank you for tuning in. And, we're going to try to be as best as we can, and I'm not going to try to assume anything. And you shouldn't try to assume anything about what happened over there. It is a tragedy that happened. There's a chance it is something that could be, or could have been, prevented, depending on different procedures if it was an IMC situation where his company could have had different procedures for training and learning how to get out of that. If it was a mast bumping issue, maybe he trained in a school where they didn't have Robinsons and you weren't really up to date or up to speed on dealing with mast bumping. There's a lot of different things that could have happened, and we just don't know yet. So we're not going to make any assumptions. This is all just best guesses for the information that we have at this point in time. Yeah, I hope to see you back whenever we do this New York episode in the future. Like I said, that could be a few episodes away, or it could be a lot of episodes away, depending whether we go west or east going around the world. But yeah, hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for watching.